Hello, and welcome to your first day of Just Programming for 100 Days of Clarity. Today is day 3, and so hopefully you've now installed, at the very least, again, just Clarinet and an IDE to kick off on. Again, today's going to be the first day that we get the programming, so it's going to be exciting. But before we open up the IDE, I want to point out that we chose to make this course accessible for people who have not programmed before as well. And so that requires covering a lot of fundamentals, right? So before we get into development, I do want to give just some broad overviews on what is programming, etc., what is data. At the very, very highest level, programming is reading and then either manipulating, displaying, or sending data. That's essentially all programming is in a nutshell, right? It's us either creating or receiving data, doing something, displaying some part of that, and then sending that data. At the highest level, that's all programming is. And there's two different parts to it, right? As you're hearing, there's the data, which you're probably familiar with in terms of, what is a number or a string or something of that sort. Maybe you've heard of a Boolean value before. And then, as we talked about, there are things to do with that data, actions, right? We call those functions. And so programming at the highest level just has to do with functions and data and how we use functions to either display, show, send, receive, etc. data. So moving on from that, programming languages all have different types of data. And so each programming language has a set of data types, right? And Clarity is no different. As you'll see, not just today, but in the next coming days, Clarity has a set of primitive data types. And when I say primitive, I mean extremely basic, right? As the word primitive implies. Today, we're going to be reviewing the most common and the most universal data type in all programming languages, and that is the Boolean, aka a true or a false value, aka a 0 or a 1, however you're used to thinking of Booleans. The Boolean is the most universal data type that you can find in any programming language. On top of that, of course, Clarity also has, as you'll see, Clarity has numbers, Clarity has strings. However, and this is now the first distinction, there is one particular data type that makes Clarity extremely different from the majority of programming languages. And when I say the majority, if you've already programmed, you're probably coming from, like Python or JavaScript or one of these, very common languages. In Clarity, there exists a data type called a principal. And a principal, for all intents and purposes, is just the data type that defines a wallet in the Clarity world, right? Other programming languages, such as maybe even ones that even some of the ones that have like types, explicit types, such as Swift or Java. None of them have a principal, or none of them have a wallet as one of the basic data types. There is, however, one other language that does, and that's Solidity. As we talked about before, Solidity is the programming language you use if you want to make smart contracts on Ethereum. And again, if this is your first time programming, it doesn't make too much sense, but if this isn't, then it should make sense that the wallet type, aka what we'll call as a principal, is a primitive data type in Clarity. It is a basic building block of Clarity. And again, it's the fact that a wallet or an address is a primitive data type of Clarity that Clarity has a lot of extended behavior on what we do when we send stacks or when we send assets using principals, the data type. Okay, so that being said, at the highest level, all programming is functions and data, and doing functions doing something with data. Different programming languages have different fundamental data types. Clarity for the next couple of days, we'll be reviewing what these primitive data types are, but as you'll see, the rarest one, or the one that makes Clarity unique, is the principal. Today, however, we're not going to review any of those. We're just going to review the Boolean, and we're also going to review the most basic type of function. In Clarity, there are obviously built-in Clarity functions for very simple operations, and then there's a way of writing large custom functions, right? There are 3 different types of large custom functions. There's one that you use whenever you want to write or whenever you want to change a value either on the contract or on the Stacks blockchain. There's one type, and that one's called define public, a public function. There's one type that you use when you want it to be very restricted in terms of who's using it and limit the usage to only within the contract, and that's a private function. But today, however, we're going to introduce a type of function called a read-only function. As the name implies, all of these functions, all they do is they read values from the contract. That's all they do. They are by far the simplest type of functions to write, and because of that, it's primarily what we're going to use when we want to review fundamentals of Clarity or when we want to review something, a new concept. Cool. So that's exciting. Today's lesson, and again, we're probably on 7 minutes already, so we're not going to go much longer. Maybe just maybe we're halfway there. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start writing functions and datas. Well, specifically Booleans. So go ahead, open up your IDE, open up your terminal. I already have my IDE open. I'm going to go ahead, open up my terminal as well. And again, I'm going to go ahead and clear everything. And make sure you navigate to the 100 Days of Clarity directory or wherever you're working from. Give me 1 second. Okay, cool. As you see, I already have Clarity Basics 1.clear open. That was the file that we started in the last video. And all I did for now is delete what was there. So if you're still, starting from that last video, go ahead and delete everything and start with this blank screen. Okay, our very first line, or the very first thing we're going to write, is something called a comment. And as you'll see, a comment is something that does not run, that is not, well, it is, Clarity language, but it does nothing. It is just written text that are basically notes inside of a program. They don't run anything. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to use comments to title this contract. So let's call it Clarity Basics 1. And let's say that today for day 3, we're going to cover Booleans and read only. Ooh, and I need to turn that off. Okay. And I usually start with like a 1-line description of, what is the point of this contract? Where am I writing this? So we're going to write here. We are to review the very basics of Clarity. Awesome. And right underneath that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to write our very first Clarity function. Again, I want to make this very straightforward. All we're going to do right now is write a single read-only function that returns or that shows us a Boolean, a true or a false value. And again, why are we starting with a Boolean? Because it is the most primitive or the most basic data type, not just in Clarity, but in almost all programming languages. So let's first start by writing a function. A function, and as we'll see here, a function is made up of two different parts at the highest level. Define read only. And yeah, before I write this, I want to show you guys, actually before I write this, I'm going to show you guys the syntax of Clarity, because this is a little bit of a hang up. Basically, everything inside of parentheses in Clarity is ran as a function. So for example, if you wanted to add two numbers, or if you wanted to subtract two numbers or anything, you have these operations that happen in the parentheses. So usually, for example, you write 1 plus 2 equals 3, right? Or you just write 1 plus 2. Let's say we wanted to do that operation. In Clarity, that looks like this. Plus input 1 or parameter 1, input 2 or parameter 2. These two things mean the exact same thing, but this, the one on the right, is the right way of writing in Clarity. And if you wanted to subtract, and let's say you wanted to subtract, we would do the same thing. And you would read this as, this function subtracts parameter 2 from parameter 1. Or if you wanted to multiply, etc. So parentheses, extremely common in Clarity. You'll see them almost every time for every function. And I will say that throws people off. So remember, when you're looking at a parentheses in Clarity, the leftmost value is the actual function, and then everything after tends to be the parameters. So with that said, let's go ahead and see what it's like to write a read-only function. Again, everything starts in a parentheses in Clarity. So as you can assume, we start with parentheses, define read only. Okay. Now, functions have usually three different things in Clarity. They have the name of the function, they have the inputs of the function, and again, as you'll hear me say, inputs and parameters, you can use them interchangeably. So name of the function, input of the function, and then the body of the function. So let's keep that in mind. So define read only. So first we have the name. However, when you write the name here, when you're defining functions, we want to write the name and the parameters in the same, we want to put them together. So the name and parameters go together, and then the body is separate. So let's go ahead, and here we're going to write in, we're going to write in parentheses the function name, and we'll call this show true 1. If we had parameters, we would put them in here, but right now we're not going to put any, so we leave them empty. And then all we needed is the body of the function, which after you close the name of the function, if you go to the rightmost parentheses and you press enter, this middle part now is the body of the function. Before I write this in though, I want to show you guys what would happen if you let the preview syntax complete this for you so that we can make sense of it. And again, this only works if you have that extension installed. Again, if you don't worry about it. The first 6 months of Clarity, I did not have this syntax preview. Define read only. We click that. Cool. We actually see what we just went over, right? Define read only all the way to the left. Then parentheses for the function name, which we called show true 1. And then the body afterwards, which we're just going to press enter so that our body goes here. And again, what did we want this function to do? Well, as the name says, we just wanted to show true. So we're going to go ahead, type in true, and save. Cool. So right now, as you can see, we have no errors. There's nothing really happening out, in our function. However, we can go ahead now. And now, what if we want to go ahead and we want to try running this? To do that, this is when you need to go back to your terminal, and you need to make sure that you're in the right directory. So again, right now we're in the 100 Days of Clarity V directory, which is where this Clarity Basics 1 file exists. to use Clarinet, there are two main functions to run, files. One of them is Clarinet check. One of them is Clarinet console. Right now we're going to do Clarinet check. And it might give us an error because there's something wrong with another contract, which, I'm going to go ahead and fix very quickly. Okay, cool. And now if we run Clarinet check again, we can see here that there's no mistakes, or our terminal is saying that. And again, this is a lot of text, but it's because I have a lot of contracts here, because I'm basically re-recording this at the beginning. But if we wanted to just run this function, this is what we would do. And actually, we're going to pause right here really quickly.